Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Retro Wrestling Review Series, Season 7, Episode 1. This is going to be the season premiere, obviously, because the first episode of any season is usually the season premiere. And I'm pretty damn excited to be doing this show again. I love talking about wrestling from the past, no matter if it's 4 years ago, a year ago. I just love talking about some old wrestling. So let's do just that. Sorry, I actually had to take a hiatus from doing this show. What happened was I was going to do the WrestleMania review series. I had spring break, but I just got really too damn busy with homework and stuff like that, so I just didn't have time to do it. And I didn't really want to start doing the WrestleMania review series and not be able to finish it, because I don't want it to be like with the Royal Rumble review series where I started it, wasn't able to finish it, which is my own fault that I didn't finish it. So right now I am going to start the new series. And this time, I'm going to make sure that every time I start one, I'll end up finishing it. So that way, it's not like the Royal Rumble review series. So, first topic. So this is going to be the first one of the month, actually. I'm going to be doing 3 seasons of the Retro Wrestling Review Series this month to make up for lost time for when I didn't do the WrestleMania Review Series. It wasn't actually supposed to be 3 seasons this month. It was only supposed to really be 2. But we had a little bit of a change, and I'll explain it in the next season. But this season, I am going to be doing the Payback Review Series. Payback is coming up on pay-per-view on April 30th, 2017 on the WWE Network. So I figured why not go through each Payback, watch every single one of them, and review every single one of them. And I'm going to do just that. And I'm going to start off with the first Payback ever, Payback from 2013. It actually feels like it was just yesterday that I was watching the show. I remember I streamed the show. I didn't buy it on pay-per-view because I couldn't really afford it and stuff like that. So I ended up streaming this pay-per-view. So I remember I missed a match on this show. But this show, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what I think about this show. I remember when I watched it at the time, I thought the show was very average. And I don't know if I'm still going to think that watching it back, if it's going to piss me off, because what's happened is I've gone back and watched the show and it's pissed me off because of where guys are placed on the card nowadays. I wonder if it's going to make me happy, because when there's been shows I've gone back and rewatched, and I'm actually thinking, you know what, this wasn't that bad as I remember it being back then. So I do kind of question what my viewpoint of this show is going to be. I'll just kind of go through what the matches were. This show, though, took place in, I believe it was, let me just make sure it was Chicago, Illinois. I know it was in Chicago. Yep, Chicago, Illinois. Which it featured a hometown boy that's no longer with the WWE anymore, which we'll get into. And it had a total of 9 matches, but only 8 of them made the main card because they did the pre-show every month. And the matches on this show, we had an actual pre-show match. This was pretty much like, if you ever heard of the pay-per-view United Champions, where every championship was defended, this was pretty much one of those pay-per-views. Because every title that was active at the time was defended. The Intercontinental Championship was defended. The Divas Championship was defended. The United States Championship was defended. The World Heavyweight Championship was defended. The WWE Tag Team Championships were defended. And the WWE Championship was defended. And then they had like a singles match on the show. So you could pretty much call this Night of Champions, because this is kind of really what it was. Which is kind of weird. Looking back at it. This, if you look at the card on paper, actually, if you haven't seen the show, it looks like a pretty good card on paper. But I'll have to wait and see when I go back and rewatch it again. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'm going to structure this video where I'm going to review the Kickoff first, and then after, and I'm just going to review it all in one take, and after, when I actually start watching the show, after each match or segment, I'm going to review it all in different takes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let's get to talking about Payback. Alright, so starting with the Kickoff itself, we had Josh Matthews, Big Show, R-Truth, and Cody Rhodes on the panel. And something I like to do is I like to say where the superstars are nowadays. So I guess I can kind of mention where all these people that were on the panel out, because this is when the WWE first started doing the panel for pay-per-views. They had started it at WrestleMania 29. But Josh Matthews is now in TNA, or is now like they don't like to call it that anymore. It's just Impact Wrestling now, and ironically, he's like the biggest heel in that company, which is really bad. At least from what I'm heard, anyways. He's like Michael Cole when he was heel in 2011. Big Show is about in the same spot as he was. You know, sometimes he'll be up here, down here. He's definitely turned face and heel a lot more. R-Truth in the exact same spot as he was. And Cody Rhodes kind of went up, but then eventually now he's not even with the company anymore, and he wrestles all over the world now in the Indies. He wrestles in Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, Global Force Wrestling. He wrestles everywhere. So good for Cody. But it does suck that, WWE dropped the ball bad with Cody Rhodes. I don't know if he'll be back or not one day, but that just sucks. And then on commentary, we had JBL, Michael Cole, and Jerry the King Lawler, who Jerry the King Lawler doesn't do commentary anymore. I really miss him on commentary, actually. I really wish he was still doing commentary. And they announced some of the matches on the show. I'll announce what the matches are right now. It was the kickoff match between Sheamus and Damian Sandow, which I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. The triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship between Curtis Axel, Wade Barrett, and The Miz. I'll talk about the build-up to these matches in a couple of minutes. And then the Divas Championship match between AJ Lee and Kaitlyn. The United States Championship match between Dean Ambrose and Kane. The World Heavyweight Championship match between Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler. A singles match between CM Punk and Chris Jericho. A WWE Tag Team Championship match between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, facing Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton, and a 3 Stages of Hell match for the WWE Championship between John Cena and Ryback. So now that I've kind of gone through all the matches, let me talk about the build-up to some of these matches. And I'm actually just going to talk about the build-up because the first match, the kickoff match, literally was like the first match. It was the first thing you saw on the kickoff. It was Damian Sandow versus Sheamus. I actually enjoyed the storyline to this match. Damian Sandow was trying to show why he's a really smart wrestler, because his whole gimmick was he's the intellectual savior of the masses. So he would set up these little games to show how smart he is. And Sheamus would try to play these games. He did games like Tales of the Gordian Knot. The game where you have like a ball and you put it inside a cup and you move the cups around. You have to find the ball. And then he played chess with Deep Blue, who was a supercomputer. But Sheamus, pretty much being a dick, would mess up these games for Sandow. And eventually Sandow just had enough and beat the crap out of Sheamus for it. So this set up this match here. What made this feud actually was a decent feud, mainly because Sandow was so great at the time. So he made him work, and Sheamus was just being a dickhead. And I always kind of liked how Sandow would constantly outsmoke Sheamus during this feud. So I didn't mind this feud too much, and the match itself actually was fairly solid. It was definitely a match that belonged on the kickoff. And pretty much the beginning of this matchup was Sheamus dominated Sandow for a long-ass time, but eventually Sandow rolls out of the ring and Sheamus tosses him into the barricade, and then Sandow toe holds Sheamus into the steel post, and he hits a drop kick right through the turnbuckle, bottom turnbuckle in the post while Sheamus is on the outside. And then Sandow dominates Sheamus for a while, but eventually Sheamus tries to make a comeback. But then Sandow hits a neckbreaker while Sheamus is in between the ropes. And Sheamus then starts, and he dominates the matchup for a couple more minutes. He hits the Kobito Akiet. But then Sheamus starts to make his comeback. He goes to go off the top rope. He hits the 10 beats of the Bradbury, hits the rolling senton, covers Sandow. He kicks out. And then he goes to go off the top rope to his battering ram. But then Sandow fights, is able to push him down balls first on the top rope. And he hits a Handman's neckbreaker and it sends Sheamus to the tree wall position, which I think was a mess up because I think Sheamus was supposed to fall off the turnbuckles. And then Sandow goes for that for the neck breaker, but Sheamus counters it. But then Sandow eventually ends up hitting the neck breaker, which Sheamus kicks out of. And Sandow hits an arm drag, goes to charge at Sheamus. Sheamus hits the Irish Curse backbreaker on him 3 times, and then he hits the blow kick on Sandow for the win. Kind of a shame. It would have been nice if Sandow could have gotten a victory over Sheamus. But the fact that it was on the kickoff and Sheamus was like a former World Heavyweight Champion, you knew that Sheamus wasn't losing on the kickoff, and you knew that it was Damien Sandow and Sheamus. You knew Sheamus was winning because he's the main guy of the company, and they wouldn't want to have him lose. And the aftermath of this match was, see, this is why I don't really enjoy Sandow matches as much, because they piss me off, because Damien Sandow was somebody that had so much potential with the WWE. He was immensely talented. He was a good wrestler. He was a great talker. He had such great charisma. They really started out really well with them, and then eventually they just fell on the wayside with them. He would eventually go on to win the Money in the Bank ladder match. He would become the only superstar to fail cleanly cashing in. And then eventually he just fell from there, and he was released in 2015. No, actually, he was released in 2016, actually. And he was never seen on TV, and he lost a lot of matches. So, yeah, it sucked for Sandow, and then Sheamus pretty much stayed in the same spot since then. He ended up getting injured shortly afterwards, and then he would come back, and he would become United States Champion, WWE World Heavyweight Champion, and Tag Team Champions, and things like that. So, yeah. So that no one really... Sheamus really didn't benefit from this match because he was in the exact same spot that he was, and Sandow, this match hurt him a lot. So, looking back, this match doesn't benefit anybody, but the match is solid. You really don't need to go back and rewatch it, though. Alright, so all the build-up for these matches, though, is... they didn't talk about a lot of them, so I'll just talk about some of them now. So the build-up to the triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship was Wade Barrett had won... Wade Barrett and The Miz were feuding over the Intercontinental Championship. The Miz had won it from Barrett at WrestleMania 29, but then Barrett won it a night later. And then Wade Barrett won it, and then The Miz had gone off TV for a while, and The Miz wanted to reclaim his Intercontinental Championship back. So they did a match on SmackDown, and the match ended up getting caused by a DQ because of Fandango, who was originally supposed to be in this match, but he ended up getting a concussion. So who took his place? None other than Curtis Axel, who had been repackaged. He had been, and he was Paul Heyman's newest client. He was gonna take Curtis Axel straight to the top. And Curtis Axel got victories over big superstars. He got victories over Triple H. And he got victories over John Cena, Chris Jericho. They were all bullshit victories, but, victories, I guess, nonetheless. And he was added to this match, so this match was made a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. And they have the whole story where he's Mr. Perfect's son, and the day of this pay-per-view was on Father's Day, so they wanted to make it seem like, that he could have won the title on Father's Day to kind of pay tribute to Mr. Perfect, so I did like that part of the storyline. So, not necessarily, I guess, a bad story, but really, this storyline really wasn't anything special. And then we had the build-up for the Divas title match between AJ Lee and Kaitlyn. This match actually had a bit of story behind it. Going back, AJ Lee and Kaitlyn both came up from NXT together. Before NXT was the way it was now, it's when NXT was the reality show kind of. They were best friends on SmackDown, but then AJ Lee ended up dating Daniel Bryan, and when AJ Lee went crazy, Kaitlyn, she claims, wasn't there for her, but Kaitlyn would try to be, but AJ Lee would just continuously slap her. And eventually they kind of did things with this feud. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. And then Kaitlyn eventually would go on to win the Divas Championship, and AJ Lee became the number one contender by winning a Battle Royal. then we found out that Kaitlyn had supposedly a secret admirer, and they were trying to find out who this secret admirer was, and then we found out it was none other than Big E Langston. And we thought Big E Langston was going to turn face from this, but it didn't happen. It ended up being a trick because AJ Lee tricked her to make her feel hurt, just like AJ Lee was when Kaitlyn abandoned her. So, they tried to make a feud out of that. So, I didn't mind the storyline too much. I actually didn't mind the storyline. I didn't really like the whole thing they did with the love relationship angle, actually, though. So looking back, the storyline was stupid, but what made it better at the time was, at the time, the Divas division was absolute shit, and the Divas division never got any storyline. It was just a match. Sometimes the matches won't last too long, so I think that's why I didn't mind the storyline too much, because this was two characters that had actually been developed, and these were two people that made sense to have a match, so I was happy about it. Even though I hated Kaitlyn. She was bland as fuck, and I hated her. AJ Lee, this is when the I'll talk about when I get to the match, but after this match, the WWE starts to kind of treat the Divas division a little bit more freely, so I did like that. So I'm going to talk about the Shields matches. So the Shield was a group that had come in at Survivor Series 2012. They took out everybody. I've talked about them before on this series. They defeated, they took out everyone, guys like Ryback, Team Hell No, Randy Orton. They took everybody out, all the top stars. They were undefeated. And then at Extreme Rules, Dean Ambrose ended up winning the United States Championship, and Rollins and Reigns ended up winning the WWE Tag Team Championships from Team Hell No. So the Shield were just looking ever so dominant. No one was going to be able to stop the Shield. And they looked dominant. And they were playing the whole angle where Daniel Bryan thought he was the weak link of the team, of Team Hell No, so he wanted to prove everybody won. And Kane and Randy Orton would continuously tell him that he's not the weak link, and he is strong. So they were trying to inject Randy Orton into this feud because he hated the Shield as well. And eventually, Kane had a match with Dean Ambrose, which he ended up winning by disqualification. So Vicky Guerrero, who was the general manager of Raw at the time, granted him a United States title match. So that match really didn't have a lot of story in it. So and then randomly, Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton got a WWE Tag Team title match because they had beaten Rollins and Reigns on an episode of SmackDown by disqualification. So not necessarily the best setup for these matches, but whatever. But then it eventually accumulated on an episode of SmackDown where where Team Hell No and Randy Orton ended up defeating the Shield for the first time ever on SmackDown. The Shield had lost a 6-man tag team match, which was huge momentum. I remember, too, on the go-home show of Raw, Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan had an amazing match together, so that was really cool. So, this feud, I was interested in some of this stuff because of what they were trying to tell with Daniel Bryan. I remember they had that one episode of SmackDown where Daniel Bryan just completely kicked the Shield's ass, so it seemed like they were somewhat pushing Daniel Bryan. They were trying to kind of get him, they were going to finally end the Team Hell No, which I always liked the Team Hell No stuff, but they were going to end the Team Hell No tag team once and for all, so that was interesting. So, and I liked the Shield at the time, so I didn't mind this stuff too much, but it really wasn't a lot of storyline, so it was just kind of all pasted together. So now let me talk about the build-up for the WWE Championship match between John Cena and Ryback. This was something that had some months of story behind it because when John Cena had gotten injured when he was supposed to face off with CM Punk at Hell in a Cell for the WWE Championship, Cena couldn't compete, so he gave his shot to Ryback because he was feuding with Punk, but Ryback kept getting screwed over again and again and again out of the WWE title, whether it was by the Shield or any other shenanigans. So eventually, eventually, the night after WrestleMania 29, Ryback ended up turning heel and turned on John Cena, which it made no sense for Ryback to turn heel. I don't understand why they turned Ryback heel because it really hurt Ryback. So then, John Cena, wanted to go after Ryback. Ryback said that he did it was because John Cena said that he would always be there for him, but every time Ryback would end up being stuck on his back, always having to get the WWE Championship inches away from him. He talks about how him and Cena were the last two guys in the Royal Rumble match, and Ryback didn't get his WrestleMania moment, and Cena did. And Ryback talked about how he always helped out Cena, and Cena never helped him out when they were battling the Shield. So it shows Cena getting laid out by the Shield, and Ryback wouldn't help him. So there was that. Then they had a match at Extreme Rules. It was a last man standing match where Ryback drove Cena through the LED lights, and so the match ended up going to a no contest. So then they had an excuse to have a match up here, and Ryback wanted to originally face Cena in an ambulance match because Cena had refused to get in the ambulance. But Cena wanted to take it up a notch. He wanted to have a 3 stages of hell match. He wanted the first stage to be a lumberjack match, the second stage to be a tables match, which Ryback accepted. So they hyped it up by having Ryback look dominant, having him put people through tables, and he even put Cena himself through a table, laying out Cena. And then they had a final face-off on Raw where all this stuff was talked about. And so not necessarily a bad storyline, but really didn't care about the storyline, didn't really care about both characters. I didn't really care about Cena, didn't even really care about heel Ryback, especially since he was talking on the mic more, which Ryback at the time was not really a good talker on the mic. So then we had the build-up for the World Heavyweight Championship match between Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler. Interesting build-up. Dolph Ziggler ended up cashing in his Money in the Bank on Alberto Del Rio to win the World Heavyweight Championship the night after WrestleMania 29, which he got the biggest pop probably he's ever gotten in his career. It was a huge moment for Dolph Ziggler. And then he was supposed to defend it in a ladder match against Jack Swagger and Alberto Del Rio. And thanks to fucking Jack Swagger, that piece of shit, he got a concussion, which has forever hurt Dolph Ziggler's push. So then Del Rio defeated Swagger in an I Quit #1 contenders match. And Del Rio pretty much had matches with Biggie Langston because Dolph Ziggler had the concussion, so he really couldn't come on wrestle on TV. And then eventually Ziggler returned, and Del Rio beat him in a tag match. I mean, it wasn't a lot they could do with this feud because of the fact that Ziggler was off TV through most of it. So, but there's more on this later. And then we had the final build-up on the show. It was the match between CM Punk and Chris Jericho. Really not a lot to say about it. These were two guys that had feuded back at WrestleMania 28 and Extreme Rules 2012. And, they were feuding over to see who the best in the world was. And CM Punk earlier in the month, after WrestleMania 29, had taken a hiatus from TV because he was healing from injuries. And in real life, he had lost his WWE title at the Royal Rumble. He lost his match at WrestleMania, so they made it look like he was doubting himself. So they had him take some TV time off, and he was aligned with Paul Heyman at the time, which I thought it made sense. Even though he was a heel, which they shouldn't have turned him heel, so that was dumb. And Chris Jericho wanted to know where CM Punk was. Why CM Punk took his ball and went home. And he says that he wants to face CM Punk at Payback. To see to see if he really still is in the best in the world, which Paul Heyman accepted on his behalf. So they pretty much did some lame segments building up to this match, and they would save CM Punk for this show. And obviously CM Punk was going to get a huge reaction because it was in Chicago, as they played that into the storyline as well. And they were trying to play into the fact that Chris Jericho has never beaten CM Punk, even though he had beaten CM Punk before. So they were trying to play into that storyline. So it was definitely a okay feud. What I hated about this was like Jericho's worst one in the WWE. He was doing a lot of goofy shit at the time, so I really didn't like. I didn't really hate Jericho, but I didn't really care. I really didn't care for the one that he had. This was when he was feuding with Fandango for God knows reason. He was losing to Fandango, so yeah. So I wasn't really like a huge fan. Of course, I wasn't a huge fan of this run of Chris Jericho. This is probably, if I had to say, my least favorite run of Chris Jericho in his career. So, but those were all the build-up. The build-up to this show wasn't necessarily too bad. They had things there. Every match had some type of purpose, but it didn't really feel like it was just quite there yet. Like the IC title match was a thrown together match in a way. The Divas title match had some story, but the storyline wasn't necessarily good. The Shield matches made some sense, but they were still just kind of thrown in there. The World Heavyweight title match made sense, but since Ziggler was off TV, it was tough to build up that match. And the WWE title match had at least a lot of story behind it. It's just the performers in the match really weren't good at selling the storyline. So, yeah. So that's kind of what the build-up was. But now let's get to the actual show itself. Okay, so the show, I actually just started watching the show, and they have this great opening video package that I want to talk about. It's showing like what happened back in the 1930s in Chicago, where they have the whole gang mafia war going on, which I thought was interesting. And it talks about how a leader would look like, talking about payback and how people usually don't see it coming, but tonight you are gonna see it coming. And it goes through like the main three feuds going into the show, which is the World Heavyweight title match, the WWE title match, and the singles match. And it kind of just talks about how the person given payback, they could feel pain, but the person that's getting payback, definitely is gonna feel pain. And it just has him sitting at his desk smoking like a cigar, talking about this stuff, and I just thought it was fantastic. Really puts over the theme of this pay-per-view, and I thought it was great. Okay, so we had the actual show itself. We had the same people on commentary for this show, and we had the first match on the show. It was a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. Intercontinental Champion Wade Barrett versus Curtis Axel with Paul Heyman ringside versus The Miz. I thought this was a good opening matchup here. I thought it was solid. At first, what I always found weird about this match was Miz as a babyface. I always thought Miz was an awkward babyface because Miz just can't really. I mean, he's not really necessarily. He's not. He just can't. No, actually, I'm not even gonna say he's not necessarily a bad babyface, but he just can't pull off being a babyface. He's way too much good of a heel, so it was always weird for me to see him babyface. And him being a babyface, he's just such a better heel. And he has like that face that looks like that you would want to punch him in the face, and he just can't play a babyface. It's just the truth. But we had the actual match itself, and in the beginning, Miz is trying to fight off Axel and Barrett. Miz throws Axel out of the ring, and Miz dominates Barrett for a while. Axel actually goes to get back in the ring, but then Paul Heyman's like, save it, let them fight it out, you pick your spot. So then eventually Miz gets bounced off the rope, so he goes to drop kick Axel, but he moves out of the way, but then he just ends up tossing Axel back in, only to get taken down by Barrett. And then eventually Wade Barrett just dominates the rest of the matchup. He hits a big boot on Miz, and he just beats the crap out of him. And then eventually Axel is just watching this as it happens, and Axel tries to get back in the ring after Barrett hits Miz with a big boot. But Barrett attacks him before he can get in, goes to hit the big boot in the corner, but Miz tries to roll him up. Barrett kicks out and hits a clothesline on Miz, goes to hit the big boot off the ropes on Axel, but Axel moves out of the way, and Barrett gets hung up on the ropes, and Axel dumps Barrett out of the ring, and then pretty much Axel dominates Miz for the rest of the match, which I thought was some pretty good stuff. He actually hits a sick drop kick on Miz, and then eventually Barrett gets back in the ring, beats up Axel, charges him in the corner, and just lays it away at him with rights and left hands. And then eventually Miz starts to make his comeback. He hits a clothesline on Barrett, hits a flying axe handle on him, and Axel's able to break up the pinfall. He hits Barrett goes for the wasteland. Axel counters into the perfect plus, which gets broken up by Miz. And then Miz hits the skull crushing finale on Curtis Axel, and he goes to cover him. Barrett pulls him out of the ring, and then Barrett throws that Miz out of the ring. Barrett tries to cover him and steals the pin. Miz pulls him out of the ring, charges him into sends him kidney first into the apron, and then Miz goes to try to get the pin, but Axel ends up actually just kicking out, which normally I'm not a fan of people kicking out of finishers in the first match, but at least It had been a few minutes since Curtis Axel had been hit with the move and he had time to recover, so I did like that. And then eventually, Miz tries to work over the leg of Axel. He ends up throwing Axel out of the ring, and he gets Barrett into the figure four leg lock. And we think Barrett's going to tap out. There's no way he's going to get to the ropes. And then Curtis Axel sneaks in the ring, covers Barrett while Miz has the hold in, and gets the win, and Curtis Axel becomes the new Intercontinental Champion. It was such a good moment for Axel because he won the title on Father's Day for his father, Mr. Perfect, and it validated Curtis Axel joining up with Paul Heyman that he had a title around his waist, so I thought that made sense. And then the aftermath of this match, short-term wise, was actually pretty good. Barrett, not so much. He pretty much was jobbed out left and right. But Curtis Axel and The Miz continue feuded for the Intercontinental Championship, and Axel would retain the title at Money in the Bank against Miz. And then shortly he would lose it to Biggie Langston at the Go Home Show of Raw at Survivor Series. And then pretty much Curtis Axel's not a Paul Heyman guy anymore. And he like now the WWE's now dropped the ball bad on him. He very rarely shows up on the show now. And it's just a shame because Curtis Axel's really talented. And I would like to see him, again, at least get a shot at the United States or Intercontinental Championships. But that's just not going to happen. Miz since then has actually gone on. He's now turned back heel. He's now been a 6-time Intercontinental Champion, and he's the best thing going on SmackDown right now. So that's really cool for the Miz. And Wade Barrett's now out of the company. So out of this match, only one person really benefited from this match. So, and it's the guy that was probably the least interesting. Actually, no, the second least interesting going in this match. The guy that was getting the rocket ship up his ass, who was with Paul Heyman, is probably going to be out of the company in a month. So, yeah, great, really good. And this just proves that just because you're a Paul Heyman guy doesn't mean you're instantly going to succeed, because Curtis Axel is a big example of that. Okay, so next it plays a video package hyping out Mark Henry's return. I don't really remember where he had went because I don't remember he wasn't really injured. I believe he lost a strap match to Sheamus at Extreme Rules and he disappeared, vanished off TV for like a few weeks. But I remember when he comes back, he does that whole fake retirement angle and ends up laying out Cena with the World's Strongest Slam, and that was probably the best segment that Mark Henry's ever done in his career. If only they followed up with it and had him win the title, but it didn't happen. So yeah, it definitely brought back those memories. Okay, so next, Curtis Axel and Paul Heyman are backstage. And Triple H comes up to them and have a face-off because when Curtis Axel first aligned himself with Heyman, he was feuding with Triple H. And then Vince McMahon comes up and congratulates Axel on becoming the new champion, and then he sends them on their way. And Vince McMahon says that he wants to see Curtis Axel versus Triple H tomorrow night on Raw. He says he's feeling it. And Triple H is like, nope, not feeling it one bit. So the whole storyline here, it really didn't really play actually into a factor afterwards, was Curtis Axel and Triple H. When Curtis Axel had his first match as a Paul Heyman guy, he pretty much took out Triple H because he had been injured. And the Vince McMahon and Stephanie McMahon didn't want him wrestling Curtis Axel. Vince McMahon thought he was above that, but Triple H wanted to have the match anyways. And then, so it was this big fight. And then when Vince McMahon finally said he wanted to see the match, Triple H didn't want to see the match. I know it makes no sense, but that's what happened. It was pretty much, I think, a way to bury Curtis Axel, which I guess they succeeded with. Okay, next match was a Divas Championship match. Divas Champion Kaitlyn versus AJ Lee with Big E Langston ringside. And oh my gosh, I forgot how much Kaitlyn sucked. She wasn't necessarily, I guess, a bad wrestler, but she was in there with the right dance partner, but damn. She was fucking bland as fuck. And I like how they tried to talk about how she's going through this emotional week and she comes out kind of smiling. I thought that was kind of funny. But the match, actually, I thought was a good match. I think I enjoyed it more at the time. Like I said, you didn't really see a lot of good Divas matches back then. So, You know, that's why I probably enjoyed it more than I did, because this was when Divas Wrestling was kind of starting to slowly but surely make somewhat of a comeback, but not a lot. Um, so Kaitlyn beats the crap out of AJ Lee. She tosses her over the Spanish announce table. She beats the shit out of her. And eventually AJ Lee starts running away and she hits a drop kick from the apron. And Biggie Langston just stands there like this. I used to love it when he did that. And I'm like, this guy, I used to think that this guy is going to be nothing but a guy that just stands there and does this. And who knew that there was more talent in Biggie Langston than I could ever give him credit for. But AJ Lee dominates a good portion of the matchup for a while. And then eventually Kaitlyn starts to make a comeback. She hits a bunch of power moves on AJ Lee. And then eventually she tries to pull her away from the apron. But AJ Lee won't budge. And eventually she ends up dropping AJ Lee's belt. And the referee gets distracted that the apron's all pulled out. And AJ Lee uses the distraction to hit Kaitlyn with the belt right in the face. And she covers her. And Kaitlyn kicks out. AJ Lee gets her into the Black Widow. Kaitlyn counters into a gutbuster, and she hits a spear on her. And Kaitlyn, instead of going for the cover, blows AJ Lee a kiss, which made no sense. But Kaitlyn really just wanted to hurt AJ Lee. So, and Kaitlyn then covers her. AJ Lee kicks out, and then Kaitlyn goes for a spear in the corner. But AJ Lee moves out of the way. She hits face first into the turnbuckle, and AJ Lee gets her into the Black Widow again. And Kaitlyn ends up tapping out. AJ Lee becomes the new Divas champion, which I thought was cool. It made sense to put this title on AJ Lee at the time because she was really the hottest Divas wrestler, both literally and figuratively. But she was literally the only diva that was really featured on TV every week. She was the diva that actually had a gimmick, so it made sense to put that title on AJ Lee. And what made this match better is because this was a match that actually had a storyline behind it that involved divas, which is something you didn't really see a whole lot of. So I did like that part of it. And afterwards, Kaitlyn walks away crying, which she did a bad job acting like she was sad. And Layla comes out and feels bad for her. Then they go backstage, and Natalya and Alicia Fox both feel bad for her, but Kaitlyn says she just wants to be alone and walks away. And the aftermath of this match came where AJ Lee and Kaitlyn would continue this feud, and AJ Lee would eventually go on to win the rematch at Money in the Bank, and then they would have a mixed tag match where they were both on the opposing teams at SummerSlam, and then eventually AJ Lee would go on to become the longest reigning Divas champion. The second longest reigning Divas champion, but the longest reigning at the time. Divas champion. She would hold it until the night after WrestleMania 30, and then eventually she would lose it. And Kaitlyn eventually left the company. Her last match was actually with AJ Lee. But she left the company in January of 2014, and AJ Lee wrestled for a couple of more times. She's held the Divas Championship 3 times, and eventually she ended up leaving WWE, and now she's married to fellow former professional wrestler CM Punk. Now they're married, and we're probably never going to see AJ Lee wrestle ever again. And you could technically say that this kind of started something in the Divas division. I'm not saying this started a revolution, but you could kind of see a glimmer of that the Divas were going to be treated a little bit more fairly. Not a lot, but a little bit. Which is what this match, I think, did. So this match had some, good. This match was good, and you could still watch it and say, okay, this is kind of when the Divas division kind of took a turn a little bit. So that's what I think about it. Still think Kaitlyn sucks, though, and this definitely got Kaitlyn off that, and this definitely got that damn title off Kaitlyn, which I'm still happy about. And it made AJ Lee into probably one of the greatest female wrestlers of all time. She was just, great. She was a great wrestler, great gimmick. So, yeah. So overall, this match, it has some special consequences long term too. So I think this match accomplishes what it needs to do. Okay, so next it cuts to the panel, and they pretty much just talk about everything that's happened in the show so far with the IC title match and the Divas title match. And I gotta say, Big Show's actually nailing it on the panel. He's actually throwing out a lot of really knowledgeable facts, and he's being really knowledgeable, and I really enjoy that. So, yeah, nothing really too much there. Okay, so next it shows the Wyatt family video package. You know, this was a big group that was coming into the company at the time. It consisted of Bray Wyatt, who was originally known as Husky Harris, Luke Harper, who was a huge star on the Indies, and Eric Rowan, who was a big guy. And I'm just gonna talk. I'll talk about what I'm gonna talk about it a little bit. I remember seeing these video packages. I was really looking forward to seeing the Wyatt family when they finally debuted in WWE because this gimmick was great. It was a gimmick that um, hadn't been done in a while in WWE. It was an edgier gimmick, and it really, worked. I was looking forward to seeing them. The video packages just kept getting better and better, and then they had finally debuted in July of 2013. And that's all I'm gonna say for right now. If you want to see me talk about the Wyatt family and when it comes down to like Bray Wyatt and stuff like that, check out the next episode because I will be doing a lot of talking about it. Okay, so next match was a United States Championship match. United States Champion Dean Ambrose versus Kane. And it's really weird to watch a Dean Ambrose match and him actually give a shit because nowadays he don't give a shit. So here he at least gave a fuck. But this match I thought was a solid match. But it was really a match you probably see on Monday Night Raw. But Kane dominates the first half of it. He beats the crap out of Ambrose. Ambrose tries to dominate the matchup. Eventually he starts to work over the leg of Kane. And Kane tries to go off the top rope. Ambrose moves out of the way and he goes off and hits a elbow off the top rope. Kane starts to make his comeback. Ambrose starts to fight back. He hits the drop kick while he's against the ropes. But Kane kicks out of that. Ambrose goes for old school, but Kane counters, hits all his moves at the and he goes to chokeslam Ambrose. Ambrose rolls out of the ring. Haynes Kane up on the top rope. Kane hits a big boot on Ambrose, which causes him to fall on the outside. So Kane has to get him back in the ring. But Ambrose slaps Kane in the face on the outside. Kane hits a vicious right hand, and he goes to put Ambrose through the Spanish announcer's table, of course. And Kane goes to chokeslam him. Ambrose counters into a DDT, and then Ambrose just rolls in the ring and wins by countout. So Ambrose ends up retaining the title. Kane got counted out. Ambrose wins. I really didn't care for the finish. I don't know why they had to do a count-out finish. I don't know why Ambrose couldn't just roll Kane in, hit his finish, and got the win. I thought that would have made more sense. I thought they made Ambrose just kind of win in a cheap way. I get he's supposed to be a heel, but I just really didn't care for that finish. I feel like that should have had a clean and decisive victory, especially too since the Shield had just lost the match on the six-man tag on SmackDown. Ambrose could have really used a nice, clean, no bullshit win on Kane, but whatever. I will explain what the aftermath was for these two superstars when I get to the tag title match. So, yeah. Okay, so we had the next segment. It showed a Rob Van Dam return video package. He was returning at Money in the Bank 2013, which he did so. He was in the Money in the Bank ladder match, but he didn't win. And RVD, it was really nice to see him come back. He had been gone for a while, but he wasn't like not wrestling or anything. They'd like to tell you that. But really, he was wrestling in TNA for a while. He actually had left TNA earlier that year and went back with the WWE, and I thought he had a pretty okay run in WWE. So, yeah, that's what I think about OVD returning. It was cool. Okay, so next match was a World Heavyweight Championship match. World Heavyweight Champion Dolph Ziggler with Big E Langston and AJ Lee ringside versus Alberto Del Rio with Ricardo Rodriguez ringside. And, yeah, I thought this was a pretty good World Heavyweight Championship match because of the story being told in the match. But it pisses me off knowing what happened nowadays with this match, which I'll talk about when I get there. But the match starts off. Alberto Del Rio starts off by targeting the injured head of Dolph Ziggler because he had just gotten that concussion. So that was kind of like, the whole gist of the first beginning of the matchup. They started chain wrestling. Ziggler kept rolling out of the win. Eventually, Del Rio just hit a blow right to Ziggler's head. He had a vicious headbutt on him. He bounced his head off the announcer's table a couple of times. And then Del Rio shoves Big E, and Big E shoves him back. So the referee ejects Big E from ringside. And this allowed Ziggler to try to take advantage, but Del Rio throws him head first into the steel post. He ends up hitting a drop kick right to his head. And Del Rio starts targeting the head of Dolph Ziggler, hitting headbutts. Blows to the back of the head. He just really went off on Dolph Ziggler, but Dolph Ziggler would try to come back. He ended up hitting a botched version of the Famouser on Del Rio, but Del Rio kicked out of it, and Dolph Ziggler went to go off the top rope. Del Rio kicked him in the head, and then he hits a reverse superplex off the top rope. Ziggler kicked out of it, and the rest of the match is Del Rio continuously trying to kick Ziggler in the head. And you can kind of see, because Del Rio was supposed to be the babyface in this match. Ziggler was the heel. But you can kind of see a double turn happen. The more Del Rio kept kicking Ziggler in the head and showing no mercy on him, the more that Del Rio started to become more of a heel. The more that Dolph Ziggler kept kicking out and refusing to stay down and wanted to fight back, the more Dolph Ziggler turned into a babyface. It was something we hadn't seen in a while. We hadn't seen a double turn between two wrestlers. I don't know how long. But Del Rio, eventually the doctor tries to come in and tell Del Rio to stop the match, but tell Ziggler to stop the match, but Del Rio keeps kicking him in the back of the head, and you can kind of see Ricardo Rodriguez even turn to you a little bit too. He kind of starts to cheer on for Dolph Ziggler, and AJ Lee was kind of acting like a face because she was showing mercy for her boyfriend, telling her to not continue the match, and Del Rio gets Ziggler back in the ring, hits an Enzuigiri to the back of the head, and tries to cover him, but Ziggler kicks out yet again, and then Del Rio just starts taunting Dolph Ziggler, and eventually Ziggler takes out his knee and hits the zigzag on him, but he ends up landing on the back of his head because of the concussion, so Ziggler's unable to capitalize, and then Del Rio finally wins the World Heavyweight Championship with the kick to the head, and he wins. And due to the psychology in this match, due to the booking, I did enjoy this match, and I did enjoy it too because this match wasn't like a perfect in-ring match, but it had good characters, and it had that good Del Rio going from heel to babyface to Ziggler going from heel. No, Del Rio going from babyface to heel to Ziggler going from heel to babyface. Just my only problem with this match is nothing came out of it really. Del Rio and Ziggler had a rematch in Money in the Bank, and I expected when Del Rio had turned heel that Dolph Ziggler was going to win back the World Heavyweight Championship as a babyface, but he didn't win it back at Money in the Bank, and then the feud was just randomly dropped. And then Ziggler entered that mixed tag team match when he teamed up with Kaitlyn to face AJ Lee and Biggie Langston because they ended up turning on him, and Ziggler went into like a meaningless feud with Biggie Langston, which was a feud that made sense, but it was just weird. And then eventually Dolph Ziggler just pretty much fell off the face of the earth. I think the WWE got pissed that he got injured, and they put all this hype behind him to become the World Heavyweight Champion, and they got pissed that he's injured. They didn't get pissed at fucking Jack Swagger, the guy who fucking injured him. They got pissed at the guy that actually got injured. And Ziggler pretty much was kind of diminished down to a jobber to, like, once in a while getting, like, an Intercontinental Championship match. And then eventually Ziggler's just had this path where sometimes they'll do something with him, and then sometimes they won't. That's kind of where Dolph Ziggler went from this match. Alberto Del Rio ended up being a pretty damn boring World Heavyweight Champion. He had solid title defenses, but he just was a very bland World Heavyweight Champion. He went on to lose it to John Cena in October at Hell in a Cell, and then eventually he just kind of he left the company the first time because of a racial issue. Came back, won the U.S. title from Cena, and then now he's released again, so because they didn't do anything with him. So, yeah, Del Rio short-term wise benefited from this match, and you could say sort of long-term, Dolph Ziggler didn't really benefit at all from this match. So, the aftermath pisses me off because this was Dolph Ziggler's first big World Heavyweight Championship defense, and he lost it in his first match, even though it made sense at the time because of what they did. But then the fact that Dolph Ziggler never won back the World Heavyweight Championship to get this big babyface reaction from Alberto Del Rio is stupid. So, yeah. But the match overall, good in-ring psychology. Just the aftermath sucks. Okay, next the panel. Just kind of talk about what they thought about the World Heavyweight Championship match. And then Alberto Del Rio and Ricardo Rodriguez come out. And Alberto Del Rio talks about how he's happy to once again be your World Heavyweight Champion. And he says that he did this all for Chicago. And he says that everybody knows that he's the best wrestler in the world. He gives it 110% every night. And he says that he deserves to be the World Heavyweight Champion. So then he says, let's hear it for the new World Heavyweight Champion. And then Ricardo Rodriguez says, Alberto Del Rio. And this was obviously just to rub salt in the wounds to show that he's a heel and that he was rubbed in everybody's face, and I thought it was good. Just like I said, worst something could have come out of it where Dolph Ziggler had won back the World Heavyweight Championship, but I guess we can't all get that lucky. Okay, so next match was CM Punk with Paul Heyman ringside versus Chris Jericho. This was the only match that wasn't for a title that was on the actual show itself. And, you know, overall, seeing CM Punk come back at the time was really cool. He had changed his look. He had finally grown his hair out. He got some, he actually got somewhat of a beard. He was trying to grow a beard at the time. And he looked pretty cool. So, yeah, it was cool to see CM Punk back. And obviously he got a huge ovation since it was in his hometown. Jericho got more of a mixed reaction. They said that he was going to get completely booed out of the building, and he didn't really get booed out of the building, but he got like a mixed reaction. Both men started chain wrestling each other in the beginning of the matchup. Jericho got the upper hand at first by hitting a drop kick and an arm drag, and then a clothesline outside the ring under Punk, and then he hit a drop kick while CM Punk was on the outside. Then he went for his springboard dropkick, but Punk hung him up on the ropes. And then CM Punk dominated the matchup for a little bit. He tried to go for the like an armbar, but Jericho was able to counter it. And then Jericho went off the top rope and hit a right hand on the Punk. And then he hit the apron, the springboard dropkick. He went for the lion salt, but CM Punk was able to move out of the way, and CM Punk went for a kick to the head. Jericho moved out of the way, and then eventually CM Punk hit a crossbody off the top rope, and then he went for the go to sleep. Jericho counted into the walls of Jericho, and he got him into this move for a while, but CM Punk was able to get to the ropes. CM Punk hit a kick to the head on Jericho. And then CM Punk started to make his comeback. He had an elbow drop. And then he hit the go-to-sleep. Jericho kicked out. Then the match continued. Jericho tried to go for the walls of Jericho. Jericho eventually ended up hitting the code breaker on Punk. Punk kicked out. He went for the walls of Jericho. But Paul Heyman ended up getting up on the apron. And this distracted Jericho, which allowed CM Punk to get out of the move and hit a kick to the head on Jericho. And this ended up distracting Punk. Punk was like, what are you doing on the apron? So this allowed Jericho to catch a roll up on Punk, and he ended up and Heyman ended up nearly costing him the match, which kind of was foreshadowing the breakup between Paul Heyman and CM Punk. Then CM Punk also hit a neck breaker in this match. Jericho kicked out, and Jericho got Punk into the walls, Jericho again, and CM Punk was able to reverse it into the Intercontinental Vice, which looked really cool. I like the transition there. And then CM Punk hit a clothesline outside the ring on the Punk. He hit a suicide dive on the floor. He went to go off the top rope and hit a springboard clothesline. But at first he did it and he actually took a nasty fall. But Jericho countered into a code breaker while CM Punk was going off the top in midair, which looked really cool. And Punk was still able to kick out of that. And then Jericho got Punk into the walls of Jericho again. CM Punk fought out of it and turned it in at first, but he was still in the half crab for a while. And then CM Punk had a kick to the head on Punk. Punk had to go to sleep, and then Jericho bounces off the turnbuckle, and Punk then hits a second go to sleep, covers him, and CM Punk ended up getting the victory here, which was fine with me. I thought this match was actually really good. this match isn't as good as the past matches that they've had at WrestleMania and Extreme Rules 2012, but this was still a really good match. I think CM Punk and Chris Jericho have really good chemistry together. And then the aftermath of this match came was Jericho went on to have a few more matches in WWE before he left to go on tour with his band Fozzy. And CM Punk went on to Paul Heyman. They started to plant the seeds for the CM Punk Paul Heyman breakup, because CM Punk obviously wasn't going to be able to stay heel after this match because he was acting very babyface in this match, which he shouldn't have turned heel to begin with. So CM Punk says he doesn't want to be Paul Heyman's client anymore, but he says he's always going to be a Paul Heyman guy. And eventually it led to Paul Heyman costing CM Punk the Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank. So that was kind of what happened there. And then it led to the CM Punk Paul Heyman feud that ended at Hell in a Cell 2013. And it was, led to some pretty interesting stuff. So overall, this match I thought was really good. And I actually thought, if I had to say, this was probably the match on the show my favorite match of the show so far. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. My bad. Another thing I wanted to say about this CM Punk aftermath with CM Punk and Chris Jericho is now CM Punk isn't even in the company anymore. CM Punk ended up going on. He ended up leaving the company. He actually said that it was too soon for him to come back to the WWE when he did. He actually wanted to wait to come back until SummerSlam of that year. And CM Punk then eventually, in 2014, would go on to leave the WWE because you could just tell, but when he was on TV after this return, he didn't really care anymore. And pretty much now he's gone on to the fight to the UFC where he got his ass kicked. So it makes me question, though, that if CM Punk ever did one day return to WWE, what would the reaction be? Because he got a pretty big reaction here. And he had been off TV for only like about 2 months. What reaction would he get if he returned today? So that does leave me that question. Okay, next match was a WWE Tag Team Championship match. WWE Tag Team Champions Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. I forgot to mention in the beginning of each of the Shield matches, since Ambrose wasn't wrestling, he wasn't out there, and since Rollins and Reigns didn't wrestle in the U.S. title match, they went out there. The Shield just went out there and wrestled matches themselves, which I did like that they did that. It makes the individuals of the group look strong, that they can go out there and hold their own in wrestling matches. So I did like that. So the match starts off. Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns start off the matchup. And Daniel Bryan does everything he can to try to take him down. But since Reigns is bigger and stronger, Roman Reigns just takes him down easily with a clothesline. So Reigns and Rollins get the heat on Daniel Bryan, and they just really dominate him throughout the first half of the matchup. Then eventually, Randy Orton's able to get the hot tag. He starts going off on Reigns and Rollins. He hits a scoop slam on Rollins. He hits a draping DDT on Reigns. Rollins tries to go off the top for a blockbuster, but Orton catches him into a scoop slam, and then he ends up hitting the draping DDT on Rollins. Orton's going to go for the RKO, but Rollins rolls out of the ring, and Daniel Bryan gets upset about this, so he gets distracted by the referee gets distracted by Bryan, and then behind the referee's back, Roman Reigns hits a Superman punch on Orton, and then Rollins and Reigns dominate Orton for a while. Rollins hits a mic check into the corner, into the second turnbuckle on Orton, which looked really cool. And then eventually Randy Orton's able to fight back. He hits a drop. Reigns goes to charge at him while he's in the corner, but Orton moves out of the way. Reigns goes shoulder first into the turnbuckle, and then Orton hits a T-bone suplex on Rollins, and then Daniel Bryan gets the hot tag. He hits a double missile drop kick on Rollins and Reigns, and then he hits a drop kick into the corner back and forth. He hits the yes kicks in that case, the no kicks, and then he goes for a suicide dive, and he accidentally hits Orton, and then Reigns hits a clothesline on Bryan because Daniel Bryan gets distracted about this. They go to hit a double team move on Bryan, but Bryan fights out of it, hits a drop kick in the corner on Reigns, hits a Hurricane off the top rope on Rollins, covers him, Rollins kicks out, Daniel Bryan goes for the no lock, but Rollins is able to fight out of it. Then Daniel Bryan ends up getting him into the no lock anyways, but Reigns ends up breaking up the hold. And Then Reigns goes for the spear, and Randy Orton then goes for the RKO on Reigns. Reigns counters it. Orton and Bryan almost collide into each other, and Reigns goes to spear Orton, but Orton moves out of the way, and he ends up spearing Bryan. Orton hits an RKO on Reigns. Rollins knocks Orton out of the ring, hits the curb stomp on him, gets the victory, and Rollins and Reigns retain the WWE Tag Team Championships. I thought this was actually a really good WWE Tag Team Championship match, and I really like what they did with this match. And the aftermath of this match came where the Shield would continue to dominate the WWE. They continued to run roughshod until eventually Seth Rollins ended up turning on him in 2014. And now each member of the Shield has been WWE champion, and at least one of the members of the Shield have two of the three members of the Shield have gone on to main event WrestleMania. One of the members of the Shield has gone on to win the Royal Rumble, being Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is also a three-time WWE champion, and he's been in the ring with the all-time greats. He's a former United States. Each member of the Shield does also hold the United States Championship. Dean Ambrose is a former two-time and current Intercontinental Champion. And I think that's about it. They're both pretty much the three of the top guys of the WWE today, which is really cool. So the Shield's was a huge success. They were really successful as a group, and they became really successful as singles wrestlers. And then Randy Orton pretty much and Daniel Bryan. What came out of this was Daniel Bryan wanted to prove that he wasn't the weak link, so he ended up trying to have a match with Randy Orton the next night, but the match ended up being stopped because Daniel Bryan had supposedly suffered a concussion, which ended up actually being a real-life thing. So then Daniel Bryan beat him by countout on SmackDown. Bryan didn't want to win that way, so then Daniel Bryan cleanly beat Orton, made him tap out in an ODQ match on Raw. Randy Orton would go on to win the Money in the Bank ladder match for the WWE to get a WWE Championship match at Money in the Bank. And then, what else? Daniel Bryan then would go on to defeat John Cena clean for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam, where Triple H would turn on him, and then Randy Orton would turn heel, and Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan would go on to have amazing matches for the WWE Championship, where eventually Daniel Bryan would win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, because Randy Orton ended up unifying both the WWE and World Heavyweight Championship at the Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view of that year, or TLC for short. So everybody in this match actually benefited. Daniel Bryan became a huge star. He was already becoming a star with that yes and no chant. Randy Orton was already an established star, so this match wouldn't have hurt Randy Orton. This match wouldn't have it actually ended up benefiting him if you think about it. And everybody in the Shield benefited. Also, Kane would go on to Team Hono would go on to break up as a tag team, and Kane would just kind of go on. This was really Kane's last chance. He would go on to align himself with Randy Orton and Triple H of the Authority, actually, and become Corporate Kane. He would end up kind of having some feuds with Daniel Bryan on and off. So Kane really stayed in the same spots. But pretty much everybody from these Shield matches benefited, except for Kane and maybe Randy Orton. Well, Randy Orton benefited, but it didn't hurt Randy Orton. So overall, I like the Shield matches, kind of looking back at them to see where each member of the Shield has gone, where Daniel Bryan went, and where Randy Orton went. Another match is the Ambrose Kane match is just a Raw match, but this match actually is a really good match, and I enjoyed it. Okay, so then we had the main event. It was a 3 stages of hell match for the WWE Championship. WWE Champion John Cena versus Ryback. The first stage was a lumberjack match. So they had all the lumberjacks out there. I'll go through each one and name what the superstars doing nowadays. But you know how lumberjacks was. It usually has a lot of jobbers and stuff out there. But it was nice that they had this lumberjack, I guess, because some of these superstars who normally wouldn't get a pay-per-view payday got a pay-per-view payday. But let me go through. We have Alex Riley, who's now out of the company. Since then, he pretty much went on to become a color commentator and pretty much went on to have a pretty lame run in NXT because he was injured for like half of it. So we also had Antonio Cesaro, who is now just pronounced as Cesaro. And now he's in a tag team with Sheamus, but his career's gone up and down in WWE. There's times where they should have pushed him to a world championship run, but they've either thrown him into a tag team or just kept him in the mid card, or he's either been jobbing out. We also had Big E Langston. I've already named what happened with Big E Langston. I'm not going to go through it again. We had Brodus Clay, who at the time was in a tag team with Tensai, and now he's not even in the company anymore. He went on to turn heel, did nothing with it. Now he's in TNA / Impact Wrestling as Tyrus. Cody Rhodes. I actually thought it was kind of funny they had Cody Rhodes chained into his ring gear just so that way he could come out for this match. But I've already mentioned what Cody Rhodes is doing. I'm not going to mention it again. We have Kurt Hawkins. He ended up pretty much being a jobber the rest of his career. Got released in 2014, and he came back last year in 2016 in August, and now he's doing some weird gimmick. Curtis Axel already mentioned where he is. Damian Sandow already mentioned where he is. Darren Young, he was in a tag team at the time with Titus O'Neil, known as the Primetime Players, and now he's injured, but he's probably going to get featured in Endeavor next month. Also, we had Drew McIntyre, and Darren Young too also had that gimmick where they had Make Darren Great Again, and where he was aligned with Bob Backlund. It was pretty goofy. Then we had Drew McIntyre. Was one of 3 members of the group known as 3MB. He ended up pretty much getting released a year later. He went to TNA / Impact Wrestling, became the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. He became the Impact Grand Champion, but eventually he left TNA and he's recently just returned. He's going to be wrestling on NXT, which I'm pretty excited about. We had Epico, pretty much in a tag team with Primo. Him and Primo went on to change their gimmick to Los Matadores, but then in 2016 they became known as the Shining Stars and became Primo and Epico again, where they're con artists. We have Heath Slater, 2 or 3 members of the group known as 3MB. Pretty much stayed with the company, became a kind of a comedy character. Now he's in a tag team with Rhino, known as Beauty and the Man Beast. They were the first ever SmackDown Tag Team Champions, so Heath Slater's at least gone somewhere, I guess. Jey Uso, he's one of 2 members of the tag team known as the Usos, and now is one of the top tag teams. They've since then become 2-time WWE Tag Team Champions, and right now he's one half of the current reigning and defending SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Jimmy Uso, the other half of the Usos, pretty much in the same path. One of them got injured. I believe it was Jimmy Uso or Jay. I forget which one. And then we have Jinder Mahal, the 3rd and final member of the group known as 3MB. He ended up getting released also in 2014, the same time as Drew McIntyre. Then he came back in 2016, wrestled on Raw and pretty much as a jobber, and now needs to be wellness tested because he's on some serious steroids. We also had JTG. He was released in 2014. He was pretty much a jobber after this, and I have no clue what he's doing now. Then we have Justin Gabriel. He was released in 2015. Well, he actually requested to be released in 2015 because he was supposed to be this great mid-card wrestler, but he just pretty much was a jobber. So he went on to wrestle for Global Force Championship Wrestling as PJ Black, I believe. And he went on to wrestle for TNA Impact Wrestling, was the TNA King of the Mountain champion, and I have no clue what he's doing now. I've already mentioned what Kane's doing. Primo, I've kind of already mentioned, is doing the same thing as his tag component Epico. I've already mentioned what R-Truth is doing. I've already mentioned what Sheamus is doing. And then we have Sin Cara. I'm gonna mention Sin Cara because he actually is kind of a factor in this matchup. Then we have Ted DiBiase Jr. he pretty much went on to become nothing from this match, and he ended up leaving the company in October of 2013 because he wanted to run a business and raise a family and stuff, and he did just that. Then we have Tensai, who was a tag team with Brodus Clay, known as Tons of Funk, but now he lately went on to become commentator for NXT, and now he's under his real name, Jason Albert, and he's like the head trainer down in NXT, which so he actually is in a pretty good place. Then we had the Great Khali. The Great Khali ended up getting released in 2014 of October, and now he's running his own wrestling company, and thank God he's released because he sucked. Then we had The Miz, already mentioned what The Miz is doing. Then we have Titus O'Neil. Titus O'Neil nowadays has lately turned face. We thought he was going to have like this huge push. Eventually, actually, him and Darren Young broke up the first time as members of the Primetime Players, and then he went on to have a pretty lame heel run. They reformed the Primetime Players. They became WWE Tag Team Champions, and then they lost them. Then they pretty much just kind of wrestled as a team. They randomly split up. Titus O'Neil went on to have a pretty big babyface run, but he was suspended for grabbing Vince McMahon for no reason, and now he's pretty much back. He was a babyface. He was feuding for the U.S. title, but now he's just a jobber who gets jobbed out every week. It's pretty bad. It's pretty sad. Then we have Wade Barrett, already mentioned where he is. Then we have Yoshitatsu. He was released later on, and I haven't heard anything about him since. He was pretty much a jobber since he came to the WWE. Then we have the final lumberjack was Zack Ryder. And Zack Ryder pretty much stayed a jobber. He teamed up with Mojo Rawley to form the Hype Bros. Then he won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 32. Then he pretty much now he's injured at the moment. So Zack Ryder's at least still in the company, I guess. And so now that I've gone through all the lumberjacks and where they are, let's talk about this match itself. So we had the first stage, like I said, the lumberjack match between Ryback and Cena, and Ryback pretty much dominates. He hits a fall-away slam on Cena, and he just dominates Cena. He continuously throws him on the outside with the lumberjacks, and the lumberjacks, all the heel lumberjacks at least pound on Cena, and then when Cena throws Ryback out, nobody touches Ryback, and then Cena goes for his 5 moves of doom, goes for the 5-knuckle shuffle. Ryback counters with a spine buster. The Ryback hits a backpack chin breaker on Cena. Cena kicks out. He throws Cena out of the ring, and then the heels throw Cena back in the ring. Cena goes to AA Ryback, but Ryback hangs on the rope, so Cena just dumps Ryback out. Then all the lumberjacks come over to attack Ryback. Cena goes off the top rope, dives on everybody, and pretty much takes everybody out. And one of the funny spots in this match was there was Sin Cara, who didn't even get touched by the lumberjack, but instead he just decides to fall anyways, which I thought was hilarious. And this was back when Sin Cara was known as this was back when Mystico was portraying Sin Cara, and Mystico didn't really pretty much sucked in WWE because he refused to wrestle the WWE style of wrestling. He refused to speak English. So he kept botching a handful of time, and then finally he got his finger injured wrestling Alberto Del Rio. So he ended up getting released, and now Unico is now the one portraying Sin Cara. So yeah, so Sin Cara. So this was pretty funny though to see that happen to Sin Cara. But then the match continues. Cena and Ryback both get thrown in the ring. Cena gets the STF on Ryback, which looked like crap. Ryback counters it into the shell shock, covers Cena, and gets the first fall. So now it moves on to the second fall. It's a tables match. And Ryback goes to set up a table. He's going to put Cena through the table. But then Cena goes for the AA. Ryback tips the table over so that way he won't go through it. And this Ryback ended up countering. So then Cena knocks Ryback out of the ring. Cena goes to throw Ryback into the steps. Ryback reverses it. Ryback hits Cena. Cena goes into the steps, and then Ryback hits Cena off the head with the steps. He goes to hit him again while there's a table leaned up against the corner. Cena moves out of the way, and Ryback breaks the table with the steps. And then Cena starts to make his comeback, hits the five knuckle shuffle, hits Ryback a couple of times with the steel steps, and then Cena sets up a table. Ryback slams, hits Cena off the ribs with the steps. He goes to hit Cena with the steel steps, but then Cena moves out of the way. Ryback breaks the table again. Ryback ends up hitting a Miho clothesline, and he goes to grab a table. He goes to put Cena through it, but then Cena AAs him through the table, so Cena wins the second stage, and then Ryback immediately gets pissed. So before the second stage before the final stage starts, he attacks Cena, throws him out of the ring, beats the crap out of him, and powerbombs Cena through the English announcer's table, and then he gets him in the ring, puts Cena on his feet, so that way the referee will start the next stage. Lifts Cena over because now the next stage is an ambulance match, so he lifts Cena over so we can just put him in the ambulance, but Cena's able to fight out of it. Ryback, he throws Ryback headfirst into the ambulance. Cena grabs opens like the compartment that has a bunch of stuff in it, and he pulls out a bunch of crutches. He goes to hit Ryback with him. Ryback hits a right hand on him, goes to hit another right hand. Cena ducks, and Ryback ends up smashing one of the windows in the ambulance, and then Cena hits him with the crutch, and then Ryback and Cena continue. Cena rams Ryback back first into the ambulance. He goes to Irish whip Ryback into the door. No, Ryback goes to Irish whip him into the door, but then Cena Irish whips Ryback, and the door falls off. Cena uses the door on him, and then Ryback ends up taking off the like the part where the headlight is on the ambulance, and he hits Cena with that, and then Cena goes to go on top of the ambulance, and Cena grabs like the siren of it and hits Ryback with that, and then eventually they both go on top of the ambulance. Cena AAs Ryback through the ambulance, and Cena wins the match since Ryback technically went through the ambulance, and Cena celebrates afterwards. And overall, I thought this match was just an alright match. The best part of this match actually was the tables match, and that was my favorite stage. The lumberjack match was boring, and the ambulance match really wasn't bad, but it was just really goofy how they were taking apart this ambulance, and yeah, it was goofy the way Cena won, where we AA'd him through the ambulance. But the tables match, I actually thought that was good. I actually would have just preferred this match just to be a tables match. I wouldn't have minded that, or the ambulance match, but yeah. So Cena retains the title, and afterwards Cena would go on to have a couple of more solid WWE title defenses. He would defend it against Mark Henry at Money in the Bank, and then he would lose it to Daniel Bryan. Then he ended up getting injured. He would come back later on in the year, win the World Heavyweight Championship from Del Rio, lose the title to Randy Orton because that's when they unified him, and then he would go on to losers rematch at the Rumble, and then he pretty much continued to stay the same old Cena. Ryback suffered drastically from this match. He's never should have turned heel to begin with. This was pretty much the death of Ryback. For a while at least. They had a chance to rebuild him, which I'll talk about in this series. Ryback pretty much went on to become a really chicken shit heel. He was barely able to beat Chris Jericho. He did this whole bullying gimmick, and then all of a sudden he said he hated bullies. He aligned himself with Paul Heyman to help in that feud with CM Punk for no reason. Then he lost to CM Punk both times, and then he formed a tag team with Curtis Axel, who ended up really falling as well. And actually, the very next year, it's Ryback and Curtis Axel have a match, and you're going to notice how bad they fall. But overall, this match I thought was just alright. But yeah, definitely not the greatest main event. I definitely don't think this needed to be the 3 stages of Hell match. Probably the worst 3 stages of Hell match I've ever seen, because I've seen way better 3 stages of Hell matches. So, yeah. Also, something I want to make a habit when I'm doing these payback review series is I want to mention whether or not a wrestler got payback. You know, whether or not a wrestler got revenge, because that's the whole theme of this pay-per-view, and that sometimes I find that's been a problem in the history of the payback pay-per-views. So let me just go through the matches and see if a wrestler's gotten payback yet. Well, you know, throughout the show. Let me just pull it up on Google. So, in the pre-show, I wouldn't really say Sheamus got payback because Damian Sandow was actually the one that deserved payback, as Sheamus kept interrupting his little tasks that he was doing. In the Intercontinental Championship match, Curtis Axel really didn't need to get payback on anybody. He won the IC title for his father. If you wanted it to fit into the theme of anybody getting payback, you would have been having Miz win the title by making Barrett tap out since he took the championship from him, but that didn't happen. I would technically say that AJ Lee got payback on Kaitlyn because AJ Lee wasn't really Kaitlyn's friend anymore. Kaitlyn kind of turned her back on her, called her crazy and stuff, so I guess I can technically see it that way. During the Shield matches, they got payback on Kane, Randy Orton, and Daniel Bryan, considering the fact that Orton, Bryan, and Kane all defeated them all cost them the first loss in a 6-man tag match. Del Rio got payback on Dolph Ziggler for taking the World Heavyweight Championship from him. But really, then Dolph Ziggler was the one that deserved payback towards the end because of the shit kicking Del Rio gave him. CM Punk didn't really get any payback from Chris Jericho. If anything, if you wanted it to fit into the theme, Jericho should have gone over just because of the fact that he had never beaten CM Punk before. And I guess you could say John Cena got payback on Ryback because Ryback had set him through lights. He had injured his ankle, drove him through tables, and was laying out Cena at every point. But technically, if anyone deserved payback too, Ryback deserved payback for all the amount of times he never won the WWE Championship. He had always come this close and he never won it. So, yeah, I wouldn't really say a lot of wrestlers. The only wrestlers I can legitimately say that got payback were probably The Shield, AJ Lee, Alberto Del Rio, and maybe John Cena. But I wouldn't really say Cena. But I guess a decent amount did, but it didn't really feel like they got payback. So I wouldn't really say the theme of the pay-per-view really fit this show. So overall, going back and rewatching the show, I really didn't mind watching it too much, but it's still an average pay-per-view. I liked the IC title match, but that was a match probably you'd see on Raw. Sheamus and Sandow is a decent match, but it just pisses me to watch a Sandow match because of what happened to him in the company. The Divas title match is actually a pretty good Divas title match. US title match is good, just don't really care for the finish. The World Heavyweight title match is good psychology, but like I said, now looking back at it, kind of pisses me off because of what happens with Ziggler. And none of the guy and Del Rio's not even in the company anymore. CM Punk, Chris Jericho, still a good match. Both guys benefited from it, but they've had better matches in the past. The tag title match I actually enjoy. Both men, everybody involved benefited from that match, so that's really good. And then the 3 stages of hell match is just an alright match where Cena just wins, and Ryback became another victim of Cena. So if you went back and watched the show, you wouldn't really be pissed off if you watched it, but yeah, if you but you wouldn't really gain anything from watching the show. It's nothing really that special. But that's pretty much it, guys. Make sure to check out my other videos and make sure to subscribe to my this channel, and then my CM Brothers and Owen the Talkinator channel. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.